Welcome back to Spooky Stories. For the next 10 days leading up to Halloween, I'll be sharing spooky stories, but not always spooky, from books within the collections at Seton Hall University, along with the strange and sometimes just downright weird of collections. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to day 4 of Spooky Stories. Today I'm mixing it up and talking about scary things that make those who care with collections wide-eyed with fear. It's time for Killer Collections. And I'm joined today by our Walsh Gallery Collections Manager, Laura Hapke. Laura, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Jackie.
Now, this episode always makes me think of Radium Girls. And for those who don't know, the Radium Girls were female factory workers in the early 20th century who developed radiation poisoning from painting watch dials with luminous radium-tainted paint. Some of these girls would probably paint it on their skin and then also lick the tips of the brushes to make a point to get those, to paint the numbers of the dials and get it very sharp, very clean, very neat. This also reminds me of the Phosphorus Girls, who were female match workers who in the late 19th century suffered from a debilitating and fatal disease called Phossy Jaw due to their prolonged exposure to white phosphorus in match factories. Now, archives, museum, library professionals do not necessarily encounter the same things as the Radium Girls or the Phosphorus Girls did, but our jobs can still be just as dangerous. And we'll just dive right on in. We're going to talk about arsenic, because who doesn't love some arsenic in old books? So arsenic was a go-to pigment and preservative for many centuries. It looked beautiful and kept pests away, but left behind a rather toxic legacy. From the 18th century to the late 20th century, arsenic compounds were commonly used as a pigment in paint, a dye in food, and even clothing, while also being a preservative for biological specimens and ethnographic objects, as well as in insecticides, herbicides, rodenticides, and antibiotics. And interestingly enough, arsenic is still used in some antibiotics today. Now, I'm most familiar with arsenic as a paint pigment dye known as Scheele's green, Paris green, even Schloss green. It's a copper arsenic compound that was developed by Carl Wilhelm Scheele in 1775, and it was used to color wallpapers, paper furniture linings, and textiles used in clothing and book bindings, along with paints, wax candles, and even some children's toys. Now, many people became ill from spending time in green rooms and even wearing green dresses. Now, this color started to become banned in the 1830s and 1840s, but it started to really fall out of favor in the 1860s. However, it still lingered around and was then used for other purposes like becoming an insecticide. Now, on the topic of toxic pigments and dyes, it's not just arsenic that was used, but also mercury, cadmium, chromium, cobalt, manganese, antimony, even copper and nickel. And Laura, you have the toxic paints.
Yeah, so we recently got a donation of some beautiful botanical illustrations from the 1600s. And both me and our adjunct Kelly were looking at them, and we both wondered exactly how toxic the beautiful, vibrant paints were. Because these are from the 1600s, they're actually before the invention of Scheele's greens. So the greens in them aren't the scary ones. Instead, we have red, which probably used cinnabar, which is a mercury sulfide, and orange, which used arsenic or iron compounds. Iron's not as scary, but the arsenic definitely is. And then we have yellows, which use minerals like lead and antimony. And yeah, mostly it's lead is where we're getting a lot of the colors from. In the 1600s, we've got the lead whites, and lead is in yellow, orange, and then the red is the mercury. So we've got a little congregation of the heavy metals.
That actually reminds me. I just heard about lead this morning in relation to plant protein powders, and there's actually a lot of lead in plant protein powders.
Yeah.
But yeah, quite sidebar. While you have paint, I have the green books here at the collections at Seton Hall, which may or may not be arsenic infused. Even mercury, probably lead. Any of the colors Laura listed could be present in the books themselves. However, they don't seem to be as toxic to researchers or archives, library, museum professionals as biological specimens and even ethnographic objects treated with arsenic, which I believe are thankfully lacking in our collections.
Yeah, we do have some collections from Native American cultures, which causes one of the biggest problems, especially in repatriation. A lot of museums treated those ethnographic materials with these arsenic-based insecticides and didn't keep very good records about it. So sometimes you don't know if something is tainted until it's been tested for it. And that's a big problem when things are returned to those communities, because if somebody is actually regularly touching and using something without gloves, or using it for wearing it or eating with it or anything like that, that is when you actually get the heavy metals exposure, which can be very dangerous, and is why there are protocols for testing things when you're working on projects like NAGPRA.
I'll put in here, as published by the National Park Service, arsenic in the form of soap mixtures and sprays, arsenic trioxide, and sodium arsenite was used to preserve bird and mammal skins and mounts. Arsenic was also used as a fixative in the preparation of wet specimens to control the growth of microorganisms. Arsenic compounds retain their toxicity, and once treated, objects containing arsenic can probably never be fully decontaminated. Following its application, arsenic tends to adhere strongly to hair and feathers. Sometimes the compounds may be visible as a white powder. In general, the older the specimen, the greater the likelihood that arsenic will be present. So hopefully none of them look like they have white powder on them.
Not as far as I'm aware, but it's something that a lot of museums have to be really aware of when they're working on consultation and repatriation.
Things you also still have to be careful. We'll move into asbestos. Now, asbestos was once hailed as a miracle material. Fireproof, durable, and cheap, it was used in everything from insulation to military gear. And while we've come to realize it's not a safe material, items with asbestos, even asbestos itself in mineral form, have found their way into the collections. It is a fibrous mineral that doesn't burn, corrode, or conduct electricity. However, it combines easily with many other substances, which is how it became a favorite material from about 1880 to 1975. And when I say asbestos was used in everything, I do mean everything, like appliances, asphalt, felt, sheeting, shingles and tile, brake shoes and clutch pads, carpet padding, ceiling panels and tiles, cement pipes and sheets, chalkboards, floor tiles like linoleum and vinyl, geological specimens, insulation for buildings, ducts and pipes, mining equipment and paraphernalia, papers such as air cell cardboard, textiles such as clothing, hot pads and ironing board covers, wall boards, tiles, and textured finishes, and much more. And now it's most dangerous when it's damaged and its particles are released. Otherwise, it's pretty chill.
Yeah, you and I were talking about asbestos yesterday while we were preparing for this, and we both grew up in houses that probably had quite a lot of asbestos in them. You find it in things like popcorn ceilings and your kitchen tiles. And it really becomes a problem when you start renovating.
Yeah, so especially something, well, popcorn ceiling is different because you have to like shave that off. But
Yeah.
something for like a floor tile, if it's still together, you just cover it back up. That's what they tell you to do. Doesn't seem safe, really. But I mean, I guess it is. Just cover it back up. Just pretend it's not there. And I'll quote from the National Park Service again: damaged ACMs release asbestos particles into the air that are 1,200 times thinner than a human hair. These small and light particles remain in the air for a long time. Asbestos in the air can rain down on collections, coating them with fine fibers. As staff touch contaminated collections, they stir the fibers into the air and onto their clothing and hair. People may ingest asbestos if they eat in areas where there are fibers in the air, and families of exposed staff may inhale asbestos fibers from the exposed person's clothing if precautions aren't taken. And these particles penetrate and remain in the lungs and airways, eventually leading to cancers in the esophagus, larynx, lungs, oral cavity, stomach, colon, and even kidneys. And thankfully, I haven't encountered asbestos as an ingredient in an item that is in the collection. It's more with buildings.
Yeah, we're kind of lucky here because our building was built in 1994. So, sort of after the rise and fall of asbestos as a miracle material. So, thankfully, our collections are probably not exposed to that, but we did find a mineral sample of asbestos in one of our drawers a little while ago. Kelly and I were working on an inventory project, and we opened a drawer full of mineral samples and found a hairy rock. And both of us had to take a moment. And we recognized what it was. And so we put on some extra PPE, bagged it, and have flagged that drawer as a bit of a danger when it comes to the asbestos. Uh, yeah, it can show up in the weirdest places.
So we could continue to talk about elements and minerals. By the way, elements like arsenic are the most basic structure of a single type of atom, while minerals are a collection of elements in a crystalline configuration that occur naturally. I had to look that up to totally understand it. So, like cinnabar, mercury is in cinnabar. So, element mixes with something else to become a mineral. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. An element is the basic form, and minerals have elements in them.
And we could talk about mold. I mean, we love mold, but we're gonna not talk about mold this time. And if you want to hear us talk about mold, we probably talked about mold last year. So if you haven't checked out this mini series podcast before, go back and listen to Killer Collections because we probably talked about mold. So instead, we're gonna talk about the suspicious orange sludge that is leaking from a metal map case in our secure storage. And for anyone listening, we are taking all ideas as to what it could possibly be. But right now we suspect it's some sort of adhesive or draw lubricant. But it's still just quite weird to see a bright orange sludge just dripping from metal. And we have touched it and inspected it. It's quite sticky, tacky even, has no smell, and is worse than molasses. And it slowly drips into a puddle of sludge. It's quite strange.
Yeah, it's a thick orange goo. Both Jackie and I have cleaned it up off of the floor tiles. And so she describes it as worse than molasses. I think of it as a really thick, like non-Newtonian peanut butter texture. It's really something.
Well, I guess that is it for our Killer Collections episode. Laura, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Jackie.
Thanks for tuning in. And that is it for today's episode of Spooky Stories. If you have enjoyed Spooky Stories, be sure to share and follow us on social media at SHU_libraries. Until next time, keep your curiosity alive, and remember, the library holds more than just books. Some stories may linger long after the lights go out.